In this video, I want to offer some general advice about writing, and especially about writing essays. Hemingway is right, writing is hard. On the other hand, there's nothing to it. All you do is sit down at a typewriter or notebook or computer and bleed. Clive James reminds us that good writers write for somebody, and when they write, they have their reader in mind. The best writers serve their readers well, and one of the ways they do that is by not expecting that their readers will do half of the writer's work for them. Hence, writing is essentially rewriting. Indeed, very few things worth reading haven't been rewritten multiple times. Done properly, every rewrite creates a piece of work in which the structure better serves the argument, sentences are clearer, phrases are tighter, illustrations more fitting. This is a reminder that editing is an indispensable part of the writing process, and editing is incredibly hard work. It taxes the mind in ways that few other steps in the writing process do. One can write a first draft while tired or even drunk, but editing can only be done while one is sober and very awake. The Pulitzer Prize-winning author Marilynne Robinson writes, "I don't like categories like religious and non-religious. As soon as religion draws a line around itself, it becomes falsified. It seems to me that anything that is written compassionately and perceptively probably satisfies every definition of religious, whether a writer intends it to be religious or not." Considering these words in the context of theological writing, we're encouraged to proceed on the bold and not immediately obvious assumption that the earth is indeed the Lord's. One of the ways that we can witness to that claim is by freely drawing upon resources that are beyond the traditional bounds of the subject. This means not allowing oneself to be boxed into a particular genre or set of assumptions about what does and what does not constitute appropriate material and subject matter for theological work. The theologian must be free to range across and to engage with as wide a landscape of objects and spaces as is available. A good argument is a good argument, and the best theological writing draws from a large landscape of human thinking. Very often, we really don't know what we're trying to say until we arrive at somewhere nearer the end. It is not until we have organised our thoughts and made significant editorial decisions about what should and should not be included that it becomes clearer to us what the argument we are trying to make is. Certainly, a blank sheet of paper can be a terrifying and intimidating thing, but every essay must begin by writing something. It may not be the opening sentence, but it is where you will start. As you begin researching your chosen topic, you will be introduced to new ideas and begin to make connections between these. A good writer will avoid simply regurgitating these ideas, but rather will take them and ingest them and let them sit with him or her for a significant period of time. This must not be rushed, and it is at least part of the reason that by far the majority of good essays take weeks and months, even years sometimes, rather than days to write. Then, when he or she is ready to write, what emerges will be their own. This means that when quotations are used, the essayist will not let the quote do all of the work for them, but they'll use those words to serve their own argument, an argument that may well be quite different to that for which the words were originally employed. All this is by way of saying that a good essay takes work. As the great Dr. Johnson once said, "What is written without effort is in general read without pleasure." Another Pulitzer Prize-winning author, Saul Bellow, once quipped that you never have to change anything you got up in the middle of the night to write. This is not always true, but it does reflect the experience of a great many writers who confess that the best writing is marked by moments of real inspiration that seem to come from outside of the writer and their efforts altogether. One might also confess that often that inspiration emerges in the context of thoughts that have taken a great deal of energy to arrive at, and indeed would not have arrived at all were it not for the hard work of ploughing that prepares the mind for newness to emerge. Some of us keep a notebook beside us when we sleep or carry one with us when we are off for a walk. And we dream of having a special whiteboard in the shower, precisely in order that we might capture those creative flashes of insight and connection that come to us when we are most relaxed and most unaware. It is not uncommon for students and others to feel quite paralysed by the burden of perfection. There are excellent students who do the required reading, who take wonderful notes, who engage with lecture material, who ask great questions, etc., and yet who struggle to successfully pass a subject because they can't bring themselves to hit the send button. The brute fact is that it is very unlikely indeed that your essay is going to be the best or the last thing that you will ever write. It will not be the definitive magnum opus of your life. It is just an essay, a piece of work that captures, hopefully honestly, your thinking on a particular subject at this point in your life. It will likely be near the bottom of a recycle bin soon enough. T.S. Eliot challenges the notion that our efforts must produce something that is completely precious. Indeed, the best theological writing is marked by a deep sense of provisionality and humility about claims being made. And that is precisely why we can, and hopefully will do, take great risks with our writing. Certainly, we will not mature as theologians unless we are prepared to leave the shallows and to venture out into depths wherein one feels some real danger. Turning now to some specifics about essays themselves, the first thing that you will need to do is to analyse the question. Carefully note what the key words and phrases are. Remember that the question may not be asking what you thought it was or what you wish it was. If you're unsure about what the question is, ask. Ask your fellow students how they're interpreting the question and get clarification from the lecturer or tutor. Then you need to research the question. Your essay needs to show evidence of new learning. This means that it will be necessary to get familiar with the most important literature on the subject. That means using libraries, accessing journal articles, checking out the reading guides in the unit manual, asking your lecturer or tutor or fellow students about good resources. If you need help accessing journal articles, talk to the librarian or to a fellow student or to your lecturer, all of whom I will imagine be quite willing to assist you. Use online material sparingly and critically. While there is some excellent material available online, there's also a great deal of poppycock, and theology is certainly not in the slightest exempt from that. That's why part of being a good scholar and a good theologian is learning to develop your skills in discernment. Unless the essay asks you to research the editorial practices of Wikipedia, or some such thing, then please avoid citing Wikipedia in your essays. Wikipedia is often a very helpful preliminary resource for being introduced to an idea and to perhaps obtain a few helpful suggestions about where to go next. But it's not an acceptable source for any serious academic work. Students sometimes ask about the number of resources one should engage with in an essay. As a general rule of thumb, Level 1 essays should engage with no less than 3 major resources. Level 2 essays with no less than 4 major resources. Level 3 essays with a minimum of 6 major resources. And essays undertaken at levels 8 and 9 should have consulted from and engaged with a minimum of 7 major resources. Turning now to the essay proper, the most important thing here to note is that an essay is not an opportunity to say everything you know about a particular topic. Neither is an essay like an encyclopedia article that tries to give equal weight to various positions. Rather, an essay is a tightly structured and sustained argument, focused on a particular question or topic. It takes a stand, it offers a position, it defends a single thesis, however provisional, that engages the question being asked. And it employs relevant literature and relevant illustrations in order to support, extend, communicate, and ground that argument in ways that persuade the reader of its veracity. This means that every sentence, every paragraph, every section, every quotation, Every illustration must serve your argument in this essay. No matter how wonderful an insight or quotation it may be, if it doesn't serve your argument in this essay, then leave it out. Perhaps you'll find some use for it elsewhere. But whatever you do, don't simply dump it in a footnote somewhere. Footnotes are not a dumping ground for words you aren't sure what to do with. Next, plan your structure and organise your ideas. Here, the use of subheadings can be especially helpful to make the structure clearer to readers. They can also help you organise your thoughts, to help you make decisions about where various materials should be placed, and about what you need to include and what you may need to omit in order to serve your argument and to carry it further. The structure of a basic essay is quite straightforward. There is an introduction, the main body, and a conclusion. The introduction is typically quite brief, say 2 or 3 paragraphs. This is where you make it clear exactly what you're arguing, what your thesis statement is, and how you propose to make that argument. For example, in this essay, I will argue that X does not equal Y and Z. In order to make this argument, I will consider A, B, and C, I will draw upon resources D, E, and F, and attend particularly to questions about G, H, and I. For reasons J and K, I will not be considering L and M. The introduction should also define any main terms you will use, especially technical terms or ones that are key for your argument, and make explicit how you are using them. The body of the essay is where you develop your main argument and its central ideas, responding, where relevant, to any potential counter-arguments. Again, subheadings can be particularly helpful here in organising your thoughts and in building your case. Each paragraph should be disciplined by attending to one main idea that serves your argument. A typical paragraph contains a topic sentence that states the main or controlling idea, some supporting evidence to explain or to develop your main point, supporting evidence from your research, including relevant data and quotations, some analysis and interpretation of the supporting research, noting any areas of real significance for your particular argument, and finally a concluding sentence or two that restates your point and provides some transition to the following paragraph or section. The conclusion is where you restate your thesis. It is also where you briefly summarise your main arguments and ideas. Here, you can also offer some kind of broad statement about possible implications of your argument or possible trajectories for future exploration, a kind of, if I had another 10,000 words to play with, this is how I might have developed my argument further. One of the reasons that this is important is because a good essay has a sense of openness about its conclusions, encouraging the reader to think further about particular directions where the argument might lead and implications that may arise from taking seriously the convictions being articulated. But the conclusion is not the place to introduce new material into your essay. That should be done in the main body. Then comes the difficult and indispensable work of rereading, of editing, and of rewriting. Hemingway called rewriting the only kind of writing. This can be the most painful part of the entire process, where you might have to cull entire sections that have taken you weeks or months to write. But done well, your essay will be better for it, its argument tighter, its sentences and carefully chosen words carrying their proper meaning. Here it can also be especially helpful to ask a friend to read through your essay or to offer some critical suggestions for how it might be improved. Also, note that many improvements come readily after a break and with fresh eyes. It is frightfully difficult to edit when you're tired. So write, sleep on it, wake up, edit. Along the way, ask yourself a series of questions. Does my argument answer the question? Does the overall structure of the essay serve this argument well? Does each section and each paragraph of the essay relate to what comes before and after? Is it clear that my examples and quotes really support my argument, or are they a distraction? Do I really need that quotation, or would this part of the essay be more effective if I put this material in my own words? Have I represented fairly the counter-arguments? Remember that arguments are not won by caricaturing opposing positions or by offering sweeping or unsubstantiated claims. It is better to make and support a modest claim than to declare an unsupported statement, no matter how orthodox it may sound. Ask, could I have written this sentence, this paragraph, more clearly? How? Is my use of tenses consistent? Is my punctuation correct? Have I fully referenced all of my sources? Are the quotations accurate and properly introduced? Have I properly referred to authors' names? Is my use of language gender inclusive? Have I remembered to reference my sources properly, using the proper style? So in the unit manual, you'll find more information about this, including many examples of how to properly style your footnotes and your bibliography. Also in the unit manual, you'll find an assignment checklist that you're encouraged to work through before submitting your work. This lists some really basic questions like, is my argument as coherent as it could be? Have I used the right and the best sources? Is there enough of my own voice in this essay? Are long citations indented from the main text? Is the essay within 10% of the required word count? And finally, after you have submitted the essay, set aside some time to reflect on the whole experience. This is important because writing an essay for university ought not be primarily about ticking off a task. At its best, it is about the formation of a scholar. So use this post-essay time to firstly celebrate and mark the achievement in whatever way is meaningful to you. It is also a good time to reflect on the question, how do I learn? Not simply what did I learn, but how did I learn? What processes, what habits, tools, environments did I use to best serve my learning? How did this take place or not take place? Ask also, how did I allow myself to be challenged, extended, and transformed as a result of undertaking this piece of work? What things can I take from this and apply to other areas of my life? And, as a parting word, remember that it is very unlikely that the first draft of anything you write is going to be great. And thank God for that, because it's in the process that the most important work happens.